What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today when I talk to you about Lucid, I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what is really moving it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So Lucid is down 0.92%, 213 the low, 218 at the high, but very low volume. So 28.6 million shares being traded, 157 is the average. No different than yesterday. We still were red, but there was a lot of institutions buying the dip. No different than today. So on the secondary market, these are all the transactions above $100,000. One sell for $148,000. Everything else is buys. So big money is buying the dip, I guess, if that makes sense. But algorithmic trading is the largest force, and clearly with Lucid being below the super trend indicator, algorithmic trading is signaling Lucid as a sell. So this is why you do have a certain level of kind of general suppression, and then at the same time you do have shorts. Right now they are increasing a small amount, 133,000, but when I was starting to prepare for the video, they were increasing roughly around 2 million shares. So that is the attributing cause why it went down, is no different than yesterday. Algorithmic trading and shorts. As far as Lucid, there wasn't any news from them, no SEC filings, but there was a couple of things I wanted to share with you. One was this. So it looks like there was a event at Pier 17 in New York, and a lot of big names, a lot of TikTokers, a couple of soccer players, and it looks like Eminem did join. And you can kind of see he even shouted out Lucid. I don't see any pictures of Eminem with a Lucid, but nonetheless, this is good because a lot of these individuals, the TikTokers, Eminem, they all have like very big audiences. So he has, for instance, even on Twitter, which I don't believe is his biggest platform, 21.7 million. So pretty good stuff. I think the real question is if Eminem and a lot of these individuals were paid. I think that's kind of the fine line, whether this is bullish, if Lucid is actually getting utility out of this and it's resulting in sales. So let me know your viewpoint on that. But clearly, I think the fact that Lucid is sponsoring this, it goes to show that they are trying. I know that's one thing that I've kind of complained of Lucid in the past, is that they don't generally know what their target audience is. So I think by them doing this, they're testing the waters for different kind of platforms to market. So trying out Eminem, for instance, and maybe a couple others, TikTokers, soccer players, and so forth. So yeah, I think generally this is a good thing. So what's your viewpoint on this in the comments below? And yeah, aside from that though, there really isn't any macro data points that's moving the market. So it's a relatively quiet day, thus the lower volume. And looking at the options, 349,000 in calls, 151,000 in puts. So very low volume even for options. 51% of all the options being done are bearish in nature. So despite it going down a lot in the short term, big money is still anticipating for it to continue to move lower, which is rather unfortunate. But from a bulls standpoint, there's a consensus for it to be back at that 250 and above going into next week. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub 250. So clearly we're on a key pivot right now. And yeah, with today being Friday, on a side note, this is the open interest. So you have 3,000 at that 2, 51,000 at that 250, and then 72,000 at that 3. Fair to assume that the 250 and above is going to expire worthless. That 3,000 won't really amount to really anything. So you won't see any bump up in the price or anything. These are all the transactions occurring on the dark pool above $100,000. So even that exchange is relatively quiet. And right now with it at 215, it is trading between this S2 and this S3. So that 217 unfortunately did fail to hold. So the next strong support is going to be that $1.93, or best case scenario, you see Lucid kind of move higher above that 217 and closes above that today. But that ultimately is going to be a very big deal, at least in the short term. So just kind of watch for that. If not, $1.93 potentially might be that next support and where it might be gravitating towards. Flip side, 232 is going to be the next strong target / resistance, and I don't really see that being hit unless Lucid does put out, let's say, another partnership or something along those lines. There hasn't been any new analyst ratings, so I think all the ratings have come out. You might see one or two possibly get rolled over into next week. I think Morgan Stanley, maybe TD as well, but essentially this is it. So $3.23 being that price target consensus of them, and that does represent a 49.88% upside. No real articles coming out of value. A lot of articles kind of just citing kind of specific things from the actual earnings, most recent earnings. So nothing crazy to bring up in my opinion. On the actual chart itself, it is below that super trend. This is why you do have that level of suppression from algorithms. It is also below that 50-day moving average, so that is sitting at 236. So that's ideally as well something that it does close above, let's say going sometime next week, then you'll see a nice push higher. But a lot of resistance right now is above us. Stochastic RSI very oversold, so again a good piece of news, whether it be specific to Lucid or the broader market. You could see a nice push higher, and I think when it came down to Lucid, this nice push higher most likely was attributed to this news associated to Tesla. It kind of coincides with that, but Tesla secures Texas rideshare permit for robo-taxi operation. So clearly, maybe there's some correlation, deep correlation between Tesla getting the necessary permits and what might be coming for Lucid down the line. So let me know your viewpoint on Lucid. Have you been buying? What's your kind of general thoughts on it? Do you think it is going to potentially hit that $1.93, or do you think that we are going to see a very nice push higher and a reversal? And if so, what do you think would cause that? So yeah, let me know your thoughts. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.